Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at Beta FPV's Air65 WISP edition. This is kind of a Black Friday special. One of the things that makes it special is the glow-in-the-dark feature when you expose it to sunlight. They say for 30 minutes, but I've seen it work with less than 30 minutes. And also a UV light, which I bought a UV light flashlight in order to test that out. Sure enough, it does work. It doesn't take very long at all. They have also upgraded the canopy. They call it the Air 2 canopy, but don't really comment about what they upgraded. To me, it looks very similar to what we've seen in the past. The exception might be that we have kind of a loop here at the front rather than a single strut coming down and then a separated screw to hold the camera in. They also removed a rubber grommet from up front. They say they did that because that increases durability and decreases the damage that you might possibly get to the flight controller. Still comes with a CO3 camera from Beta FPV, as well as 0702 SE 27,000 kV motors. The props are GemFan1219S-3B. They're supposed to glow, and they kind of look like they do in the pictures and video that I took. Of course, it does run Beta FPV's BT20. In this case, it has a U-shaped or 180-degree turn in the angle. And mine weighs on my scale 17.21 grams. I should mention that the Air65 WISP will also be available. There will be a link down in the video description to both of them or one of them, whichever I can find. And believe it or not, this is my first real flight on the Air65 WISP. Yeah, I started with a crash within the first 10 seconds, but overall, I was pretty pleased with the first real flight, especially indoors. Of course, I did do a hover test down in the basement, just kind of make sure video works and that the motor rotation, everything is good, checks out. Kind of a pre-flight inspection sort of hover test and make sure that there's nothing that I need to be aware of when it comes to its particular flight. But as you would expect, this flies a lot like the Air65. And it is essentially the Air65 with those special features that we went over in the specs list that we did in the short choppy section there at the front of the video. But again, you know, in this format, it'd be easy for me to try to play some sort of games or jokes or tell tales out of school by saying this is my first flight when it really wasn't. But it really was. And I guess we could take a look at actually my second flight, which is about the same as this, but I don't think we need to take any more time to show you additional inside flights, especially on the same night. If you don't know, I do fly these quads over the period of a number of days. It usually takes me a little bit longer to do a review than, you know, a one-day review. It usually takes me 5 flight sessions, which typically happen over 5 different days, sometimes longer, especially when I have to wait for outside flights to get a nice calm wind day or something that's at least reasonable as far as the wind goes.
Oh, dang.
And there will be an outside flight to this. I did find a reasonably calm day. It wasn't as calm as I had hoped, according to the weather predictors, but when it came down to flying in that wind that I do have coming up, it wasn't unbearable by any stretch, and we'll see it. You could take a look at it as well. I was actually pretty pleased with how this little guy handled the wind. 65 millimeter has come so far. I used to be a huge proponent, an advocate for 75 millimeter, and I think at this time 65 millimeter more if you're going to be flying inside primarily, 75 millimeter if you're going to be flying primarily outside. Of course, if you just want outright flight time and you don't care about size, you know, you're just going to cruise or go a little bit slower, a 75 millimeter is going to carry a bigger battery, and therefore you're just going to get more flight time out of that size. Quite a bit, I would say more than probably double that you will get out of a 65 millimeter. That's just how it goes with the little guys. You can also tell that this might be my first flight because the OSD isn't in my normal position as far as that bottom row goes, especially in the lower right, where it says air mode, or would tend to say air mode. It should be up one row, and then we have our clock underneath that that's ticking away. You can kind of see that last character rolling over as we get further and further along the flight. And the flight after this, of course, I noticed that. I take it back down to the basement, hook it up to the computer, and move that air mode indicator up just a touch. I did not adjust the voltage that much. There's kind of an initial voltage adjustment that, as far as the warning goes, that I pretty much always do on quads. Uh, Depending upon whether they're 1S, 2S, or whether I think they're heavier or not, I'll make an estimate at what I think I want the voltage at, and then I'll tweak it from there. In this case, because it was my first flight, no tweaks outside of my initial setup, which was below 3.5 volts. But as you can see, I did fly it too long. That particular flight came in at 3 minutes and 32 seconds, so I would say I probably flew it between 5 and 10 seconds too long. Moving on to the outside flight, doing a little lens cleaning here, and I don't think I've ever shown this before, but this is how I synchronize the audio. I do a finger indicator indicating which flight this is on that particular day. Sometimes I have to use both hands depending upon the amount of time I had. And after I do my little sync clap, I can hear a little ticking noise on the wire, so I go to check to see if my battery lead is in the props. Turns out it was probably a motor wire. I just went all around and kind of pushed them down ever so slightly, rearmed real quick. The ticking noise that I heard went away, so sit back down, and finally, away we go. So there was a little bit more battery usage in that little process. Not that it's unusual, because that happens quite a bit when it comes to me setting up for my flights, cleaning the lens off. If I notice some a smudge or something, debris on the lens, I'll go ahead and clean it off. And then the sync clap and then sitting down and getting comfortable with the goggles. I cut out a few seconds just to make it more viewable in that process. So it's actually in real time a little bit longer than what I showed you there. But the flight outside, it's only 54 degrees, a bit cool, 6 to 17 miles an hour. And hopefully with all the leaves on the ground and the flight audio, when that wind kicks up, you'll be able to hear it as the leaves move across, especially the cement. You might hear the wind actually blowing through the tree leaves as well. But I thought, again, as I said during the inside flight, this handles the wind quite well. You don't need a dead calm day. It has the power and authority to go ahead and power through that, or not be bothered by it at the very least. I can do all my typical things, and I can make sure that I demonstrate the flight characteristics that I'm able to demonstrate in my backyard with my skill set to you, so you can decide whether this is something that you're interested in or not. I don't know about the pricing. This is already launched. I should have looked before I started recording. But again, it can't be too much. It's analog. Analog's kind of back to being king, and when it comes to video, you might not agree with me there, but with the recent movements in making sure DJI, at least in the US, is not going to be, I wouldn't say available. It's not going to be as easily available, as it has been in years past. So I've always thought analog is king when it comes to whoops anyways, because of weight, with HD0 being a very close second, especially with their all-in-one board that they have come out to market with. I don't know what that's called. I think that's called a cradle, that little thing I did around the tree. Wasn't very happy with the first one. I haven't really done that in a while, so I had to go back and do another one to see if I could improve just a touch. Especially along the back pass here, normally when you have winds, I really have to be careful, because if you blow into one of those posts, especially when it's cooler out, you can get some serious damage. I did have some damage to the frame, and I'll show you that when we get back to the desk. There's also something that I think Beta FPV can do, as well as we can all do on our whoops, to improve the overall durability, and we'll take a quick peek at that as well, as the flight is coming into an end. And we got over 2 minutes and 40 seconds, or almost 2 minutes and 40 seconds of flight. But again, battery not quite where I wanted it when it came to ending the flight. 3.45, 3.46, thereabouts. So the first thing I'm going to cover is something that we can all do when it comes to increasing our durability. As you can see here, I broke the post right off. And there's hardly any bit of the screw that actually gets down into this bottom piece. And that's something, in this particular case, is that through? That looks like it's got a hole. I just think we need to get more of the screw, whether there's a hole in this area or not. We need to get more of the screw. So getting screws that are just a couple of millimeters longer will really help to shore that up, because I see this quite a bit. At least for me, I see this quite a bit, and I've seen it reported a fair bit as well. Another bit of damage, and they do note that they can't assure this glow-in-the-dark frame is just as durable as their others. I did have a few fairly serious crashes. There was one where I just got fixated on an object and just ran right into it. That was fairly severe, but this broke right back here, and that's not terribly uncommon for me either, is to break it either up here or back here. Now, the crash that I thought was most serious, I went head first, and I'm kind of wondering if I just flew straight into that, and as it rolled up and crashed, which we oftentimes do, if it hit this, and because of the angle and the joint, it was just kind of a weak spot. Maybe it didn't. Maybe I had another crash where that happened, but That's just me postulating there a little bit about how that particular crash happened. Um, these Air 2 series of frames, they put little arrows on the front and the back. It used to be we only had one arrow. It was usually on the front or the back, and we would debate whether that was a front or a back arrow. Still comes with a video reception or video milliwatts up to 400, so pretty normal stuff there. These are solder on motors, so if you're not familiar with the Air series, they're trying to get them light, so they remove the motor connectors on both ends, the board and the motor wires, and then you have to solder those on. So if you do need to replace a motor, you do have to do a touch of soldering. That's something you need to be comfortable with. Also, they don't have a USB port. That's becoming more and more common. They ship with them a little dongle like this, and you plug that in, and it is USB-C. I've already covered it, but they've got their 180-degree connector for the BT20. You can buy a connector, I think, from Weebly.com that has a light on the back, and I think that light might be like a black light, so you wouldn't necessarily have to have a UV flashlight like this in order to make it glow. That little light would make it glow all the time when it was flying, and that might be kind of cool, especially if you do indoor whoop flying around with friends and LED gates, and so it's a fairly dark environment. Let me see if I can make this work in the light here. Probably won't be able to see this much because I do have my other lights on. I can turn those off for just a second here. So not very long. Nope, don't see it. Let's turn off these lights. There's one, two. I still got another light up here and my monitor's on. Might just have too much light overall. Oops, move that. Yeah, let's keep turning lights off, see if we can make it glow. Yeah, this camera's just picking it up too well. Let me give it a little bit more UV lighting here, see if we can. That's a little better. You can kind of tell as I put the UV light on it, there's all sorts of outdoor debris around the edges where the grass and stuff is. I did clean my desk to make sure that didn't, well, I got some sparkle over there. But I did clean up because this UV light does pick up all that little stuff that it's supposed to work on. In my eyes, I can see it visually glowing, but I don't see it in the camera view too much glowing as it is. But I did use this method earlier with a different camera, and it did pick it up a whole lot better. So a fun little special Black Friday, although it's not just a Black Friday sort of sale thing. It's already available, as well as it will probably be available for a while. Again, they don't tout that this is actually more durable as far as the frame goes. And I did break mine in two different places, so that fluorescence that's they inserted into the mold may have an impact, may not. I break things sometimes just due to the way I fly and not trying to resell these things. This light, by the way, this is a 365 nm UV light. I can link it down in the video description if you're interested. It was like $8 from Amazon or something like that. I did order that because I wanted to test that UV light. I knew the sunlight works. They said you had to expose it to sunlight for 30 minutes to get the fluorescence or the glowing to work. I had it outside for one flight, which would have been less than 5 minutes total, and then brought it back in and filmed what I showed you in that particular instance without using the UV light, and it glowed for, I don't know, I was inside for probably 15 minutes and it glowed the whole time. So the glowing lasts a while. If you do have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise about the Air65 WISP Black Friday edition, please let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.